Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the latest in Total Jobs series on webinars. Today, we're going to be focusing on the transfer market. So, my name is Will Kendrick. I am one of the account directors here at the Strategic Accounts team at Totaljobs Stepstone. So, first of all, I just need to do a very little bit of housekeeping. We are recording this webinar and we will share the recording and the slides with you afterwards. So don't worry about taking notes. We're going to give you lots of information after this, so that will save you a bit of time. If you do have any questions, please drop them in the chat box and we'll come to these at the end. We are changing things slightly, so for those of you who've been following our webinar series, we've got some interactive tools, which is great. So some new things to introduce for this webinar. So we've got various polls, and we love you to get involved in the discussion. So we're going to make it a lot more interactive for you. So just to give you an overview of what is happening with the webinar scheduled today. So I'm going to be sharing our latest research into the career changes and transferable skills that you can use to support your recruitment strategy. To start with, I'm going to be looking at the state of play of the UK economy. We're then going to be looking at changing mindsets, both from the employees and also from the employers, in terms of changing sectors and transferable skills, and then look at attracting candidates. So how do we, as employers, what do we need to do differently in terms of attracting candidates? And then we're going to finish off. So that's probably going to take about 30 minutes, and then we're going to finish up with an in-depth discussion with our guest panelists. And I'm absolutely delighted, really excited to have a great panel joining me today. We have Kristen Anderson from BAT, Vicki Hyland from BP, and Neil Harvey from Allianz, which also incorporates LV Insurance. So really good to have those join me. Really excited to hear some real life examples of transferable skills from different sectors, and looking forward to the insights that they're going to bring to the table. So let me crack on with some of the research that we have conducted. So to start with, I'm going to be just looking at a quick overview of the market that we currently find ourselves in. So recent ONS figures have highlighted the wide-ranging impact of the pandemic. Obviously, this isn't a surprise to any of us. A significant drop in output across services, production, and construction industries have had a real knock-on effect on the UK GDP. And with this, spending by households and businesses fell by a quarter as lockdown measures forced people to stay at home, shops closed, building sites fell idle, and factories unfortunately paused production. So the monthly figures for the economy indicate that economic recovery strengthened from June as lockdown measures were gradually relaxed, and obviously we had an increased demand that was fueled by a rise in consumer spending. As businesses are now making themselves more COVID secure and welcome back staff or customers, the economy is now being unlocked again. And obviously, as lots of us have seen this week, and for some of us last week as well, children have been going back to school for many school pupils across the UK. So I'm sure, like other people in the audience, homeschooling kids, obviously massive challenge there, as well as working from home in the last few months. So big sigh of relief, I'm sure, for a lot of us, definitely for myself, when the kids go back to school. So things are, what is normal, we don't know, but things are showing some kind of normality, whatever that normality is. So what we're in a great position, obviously, to look at Total Jobs, to really look at where we are at the moment in the UK in terms of jobs. And what we've been seeing is a consistently high candidate searches for roles, for example, in the highest areas for logistics, for administration, and also care over the past few months. The Bank of England expects unemployment to rise further. I know that just before I came onto this webinar, I just quickly caught up with the headlines on BBC News. Looks likely it's going to rise further at the end of the year. And as government-funded support schemes such as furlough, which comes to an end in October, with this, the candidate-led market of recent years is switching, or has switched, to become very employer-led. So a few more sort of stats on the labour market. If you're posting jobs, it's likely that you've seen an increased application in numbers in a way that you haven't experienced before, or for at least a very, very long time. And as you can see on this graph here, vacancies posted dipped during the peak of the pandemic, and gradually, as sectors reopened, we're seeing a steady climb as employers get back to business. So in August, the largest volume of jobs that we saw on our platforms were in IT, logistics, skilled trades, and in social care. One thing that I've been really interested in, and this really supports the skills piece, is that during the pandemic, we've seen many people's roles that have been transformed. And there's some fantastic examples, which I'm just going to go through. Some of them on the graph here. Employees in retail businesses such as New Balance, which is a retail fashion sports brand, turned to producing surgical masks and gowns. We've had Tesla and Ford and others shift production to ventilators. Then what they were doing is they were using car parts that were no longer of use to the lack of consumer demand. And we even saw the Royal Mint even started creating plastic visors. Other sectors where they used cross-industry talent was created what Harvard's Business Review are calling it cross-industry talent exchanges. That saw employees displaced during the crisis temporarily move into sectors that didn't have the people to meet the surge in demand. So what this approach helps staff develop new skill sets, which they perhaps wouldn't be developing previously, and expand their networks, and of course avoids redundancies. And as far away as China, there's some really good examples that came out of there, where businesses established an employee sharing plan, and what that did, it gave staff without work the opportunity to temporarily move to other roles. So there were some examples where people are, they haven't got work at that particular time due to the pandemic, and they're moving temporarily to supermarkets or food delivery, which was, good to see, and obviously proving the fact that it's possible to have skills moving from sector to sector. So I just want to focus a little bit on changing mindsets. And throughout my whole career, really, I've always been aware of that there's a real stigma around the career changer or the job hopper. Previous experience with the industry looking to hire was seen as a necessity. You're only getting this job if you have 5 years, 6 years in this sector. But we've seen a real change recently, and as businesses and workers have shifted their focus and move where their skills are most needed, this is inspiring others and changing this stigma for the better. So there's more chance to think outside the box for workers and also employers. So I'm going to go into that data, but before we go into the data, I just want to take a moment to answer the first question. So for the audience, I now have a question for you. So you should see on your screen now, you should see a question, and you've got a yes or no answer. So very simple, but I'm really interested to get what the audience thinks, and then we can progress. So if you're basically the question is, are you recruiting currently? Are you currently hiring from outside of your industry? So I just need you to, I'm going to give you 20 seconds if you can just give a simple yes or no. So time starts now. So I'm just waiting for those answers to come through. Okay. So it looks like the majority of you, are saying yes. So it's great to see that so many of you are doing this and making the most out of transferable skills that are out there. What I want to do, I mean, that's fantastic. Great to see that this is actually happening. What we're going to be doing is I'm now going to look at how the pandemic has seen candidate mindsets change, meaning many are now more likely to consider changing careers and working in a different industry. There's been a real opportunity here to further broaden your talent pools and to branch out your hiring to additional relevant industries. Brilliant. So that's really positive. Thank you to all of you for joining us with that poll. So our research has found that 40% of people believe that potential employers will now be more open to them looking to change industries.
Sorry, we've just got a slight glitch with the screen. Can you stop sharing your screen and then start sharing again, please?
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you to my lovely assistant for helping me on that. Okay, so what that's saying is 2/3 of workers say that examples of businesses diversifying what they do has made them more inclined to consider changing industries. And while 1 in 5 people have explicitly said that hearing about people changing industries, what that's done is it's highlighted that there's a possibility for their own career too, which is really positive. Totaljobs research. So in terms of changing career paths, what we found is 2 in 3 people are re-evaluating their career as a direct result of COVID-19. And recent developments have meant that 1 in 5 UK workers have realised that their current role isn't for them. Overall, 7 in 10 people say they are more likely to consider a career change due to the outbreak of COVID-19. And a further 1 in 5 are using this time to plan, search, or find a new career. So some are making specific plans when it comes to making the switch. 1 in 4, so 23%, pretty decent number of workers expect to change industries within the next year. Half of workers are interested in changing industry within the next 2 years, and 43%, so that's a really high number, 43% of people want to make the move as soon as possible. I suppose, with what we've all been through, it's given a lot of people a lot of time to really think and reevaluate where they are. Businesses need to ensure that they're making the most of these shifting mindsets, or if you like, the change in mindsets and plans, and they need to make sure they position themselves in the right way for career changes, which is really important to really take advantage of the change in mindsets. So we've got another poll for you. So I'm really interested. We've done some research, and I'm really interested to see how if I can do a quick survey, quick poll with you. I'm really interested to see what you think, actually, how that compares to the survey that we did. So what do you think is the top driver for people looking to work in a different industry? So on your screen, you will be given, I'll just read it just in case it might be a bit small. You've got more training, development opportunities. Is it a better work-life balance? Is it having a new challenge? Is it increased job security? Or is it an opportunity to learn new skills? So obviously things like home working and things that will come into better work-life balance. So if you can all vote which you think is the top driver, and I should have the answers. So I'll give you some 20 seconds to do that if you could. And the answers should come through very shortly. Okay, it's incredibly small. Sorry, I'm looking at another screen. If you wonder why I'm looking up at the ceiling. But it looks like a new challenge and also better work-life balance are the biggest ones. So let's see. So if you're saying here, you're saying that that is better work-life balance and a change and more of a challenge. So let's see what our survey said. Apologies, I've just actually listened to myself saying that. I don't know if anyone used to watch this. I remember when I was a kid, I used to watch a program called Family Fortunes. So apologies if I sound like Family Fortunes here. But anyway, our survey said that 51, a new challenge and the new skills, exactly what you said. 51% say that they want to learn new skills. 51% also said they want a new challenge. So yeah, it's and work-life balance is up there as well. So interestingly, a chance to learn new skills, having a new challenge both come out on top. Probably not, obviously, from what you said, we weren't surprised with that. Followed by a better work balance, training and development opportunities, job security, and if relevant for the role, an ability to work from home, which we know is a very, very topical subject at the moment. And it's going to be really interesting to see how these needs shift as people reprioritise and as we move through the recovery period. So focusing your employer brand and your communications around these factors means that you can really connect with talent outside your existing industry. Of course, first you need to know where to look. So as part of our, you may have seen it, it's been available on LinkedIn and it's been picked up in the media, is the work that we've done at Totaljobs on the transfer market. And as part of the report that we published, we analysed 273,000 job advertisements over 1 million skills. And through this, we established the most sought after skills across all industries. And the skills employers are most often including in on job adverts are the ones that you see on the screen. And also, just to add on to that, is other interpersonal skills such as time management, numeracy, patience, and administration. So through looking at the skills across different sectors, we also established compatibility scores for key UK industries. And the analysis identified that the top skills associated with each industry, using insight from the skills listed in real job descriptions, and calculated the compatibility by comparing the number of overlapping key skills between two industries. So I'm just going to take one of them as an example, and I know that we've got a lot of people on this call from engineering. So let's just take engineering as an example. So businesses hiring from this sector can target people with relevant transferable skills from skilled trades, logistics, construction, consulting, and science. Some of these have a clear link, and engineering firms might well hire from these already, but, and this is really important, it might be that the relevance of some of the others isn't so immediately clear. And I think that's the key kind of takeaway there, is that we can't leave those out. So we have almost 40 transferable skill sector guides that you can download, and this has been part of the work that at Totaljobs that we've been doing on the transferable skills market. At the end of this webinar, we're going to be sending you a link with, as I said earlier, with a link to the webinar, but what we'll also do is give you a link where you can download various transferable skilled guides, which will help you, and you can choose obviously the ones that you think are going to be relevant to yourself. So it's really, really good bit of research that you can take away from the webinar. We know that many, while many are now considering a career change, many people will have already had to work elsewhere out of necessity due to COVID-19. And of those who found work in a different industry after being displaced by COVID-19, over half say that this career change was welcome, while 52% hope to stay in their new industry. So while this presents a challenge for employers looking to regain and retain this talent as restrictions ease, for those actively recruiting, there's been and continues to be an opportunity to scale up talent pools. So 2 in 3 believe that skills that they had previously developed were of use in their new industry, but they perhaps weren't as obvious as they would have thought they would be. The same amount believe that they have a greater understanding of how valuable their skill set is after making the switch. And something I'm really keen on, and it's really good to see this, is that 2 in 3 received training when they joined their new industry, which obviously is important. Obviously, in an ideal world, we want 100%, but 2 in 3 to make sure that people entering a new industry are given that training, development, and support, which obviously is going to give them the best chance of success in their new role. With this, 55% say that they were surprised at how smooth the transition was, which again goes back to the value of transferable skills during times where businesses and workers are forced to adapt. The method works, and it reminds us that hiring for set knowledge or experience alone isn't the solution. So you can cast your net wider and make sure that you see the benefits. So I know that we've got some great examples that we're going to hear from later. I know that Kristen from BAT has got, just as an example, has got some great examples of basically how businesses, or how her businesses has been tackling hiring for transferable skills. But there's also some other examples that, before we move to the panel, that I just wanted to share with you. So at Totaljobs, we have our sister company, which is caterer.com. They have a redeployment hub. So far, the site, just want to give you an example of how this has worked during the pandemic. So far, this site has hosted 33,000 non-hospitality roles. It generated nearly 44,000 job applications, and it basically connects hospitality staff with roles in other sectors to fill the gap before restaurants and bars reopened on the 4th of July. So applications from the redeployment hub have come from all over the UK. Jobs on the hub are selected based on their likely match to transferable hospitality skills, such as attention to detail and also flexibility. And these have included sectors like social care, sales, retail, and cleaning. And amongst the most popular have been roles in logistics and customer service. So over the last few months, what we've seen at Totaljobs is that adaptability was extremely valuable. It will continue to be a sought-after trait in candidates in the future, and with this, prioritising transferable skills over specialist skills or knowledge will be relevant to many roles. And while technical or role-specific knowledge can be taught, it's adaptability, resilience, and flexibility that has seen workers navigate the changing situation over the last 3 months. There's another example here, actually, that I just want to share with you. A great example of this is with Allianz Global Investors and Cisco. And what they did is they set up an internal project, marketplaces that distilled work into tasks and projects that were then matched with people from across the business who had the relevant skills. These marketplaces enabled people within departments who had a lack of work to find opportunities within their business using their transferable skills in business areas that could make more of an impact at that time. So there's no reason why this approach can't be used in the future too. It doesn't have, and this is a really important point, this doesn't just have to be a response to a crisis. You know, these are kind of things that we could and should be doing anyway. So with all of this, what could that attraction and brand piece actually look like? So I'm just gonna, before we move to the, come to the end of the presentation, but just before we move to the panel discussion, I'm just gonna take a quick look at a couple of quick tips from the job ad perspective, and we'll talk about the wider brand strategies as part of our panel shortly. So we talked about the changing mindsets, and what I think is really important is that we make sure that as employers we're tapping into the mindsets of people, and it's not just thinking about them only in candidate terms. If you're actively looking for people from outside your industry, you need to make it explicit in your ads or in your targeted emails. If you offer flexibility or you're looking at this, be clear on what this means for staff. Position it as a way of working, not as a work perk or benefit. And following on from the pandemic, candidates aren't thinking of flexibility in this way anymore. And it's something that many people, no matter what career stage they're at, what stage their family is at, or what responsibilities they have, that they're all looking and moving forward, whether that's flexi hours or remote working. So our research suggests that a quarter of workers have already asked their employer if they can work from home indefinitely, while 42% are planning to request this. So getting these things right, especially if you're hiring from outside your industry, where your brand could be less well known or less understood, is so important, so you can really make an impact and grab the attention of career changers. It's not just about the job details. I know this sounds simple, but it's really important that we get this right. It's looking at the language throughout your job ads has never been important. You know, if we're looking for people from different sectors, we've got to get the language right. And if you're looking to reach out to people outside of your existing industry, it's not just speaking to those needs of those in need of development, job security, and work-life balance. It's also the other, I suppose you can say, subtleties. You know, it's the subtleties that can really make a difference and ensure that you're not unwittingly reducing your talent pool, particularly in the industries that might have historic overrepresentation of one gender over another, for example. So research shows that people are less likely to apply for jobs that include historically gendered language. Sectors such as science, consulting, sales, advertising are all industries which are historically male dominated, whereas social care, animal care, public sector, administration typically see a higher percentage of women. And often industries that have overrepresentation of a certain gender also use gender biased language, which that reflects this in job adverts, which unconsciously puts others off. So if you say, let's say you work for a consulting business that has a high percentage of male staff, and you're looking to hire talent outside of your industry, interrogate the words that you use in your job ads. And if I can just use this opportunity for a plug of one of our own tools. So at Totaljobs, we have a tool called the Totaljobs Gender Bias Decoder. And what it does is it checks your language to make sure that it's not unintentionally discouraging certain demographics from applying. And it's just a really good tool to make sure that you've got your language, and you've really had a, if you like, a test to make sure that you've got your language correct. So thank you for first of all for getting involved in the polls and for listening to the presentation. I am if you have any questions, actually, before we move on to that, if you have any questions, please drop them into the panel. If we don't, into the chat box. If we don't get a chance to answer all of those, we will come back to you after the webinar. So now we're going to go on to our panel. I just going to, as I said, big thanks to our panelists for joining us. So we have Kristen Anderson, Vicki Hyland, and Neil, and they're all going to be bringing in their own expertise and experience, obviously, particularly on transfer of skills. Before I ask them to turn on their cameras, I want you to ask them the first question, if that's okay, seeing as our polls have worked so well. I thought the best thing to do, I want to see which question you want to ask our panel. So the first question is, would you like to ask our panel this? Would you like to ask them, how has the pandemic changed your approach to hiring? The second question is, how would you assess if industry experience isn't needed? And the third question is, where are employers still missing a trick when hiring? So if you can now choose which question you would like me to put to our panel, that would be great. If you can do that now, and then I will ask them to join me once I've got the answer to that. So I'll give you about sort of 20 seconds. So you would like to ask our panel, where are employers still missing a trick when hiring? So panel, give you a little bit of time to think about the answer to that. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And if you could turn your webcams on, panel, that'd be great. Hello?
Hello.
Hello. Hi, let me just, great. Welcome. Thank you, panel, for joining me. Thank you very much. How are you all? You're well?
Good, thanks.
Very good, thanks.
All good, thanks, Will.
Great, thank you. Brilliant. Well, just to start with then, I gave a very brief introduction, but if you can we, so from my screen, so Vicki, if we go round Vicki, could you just introduce yourself and give a little bit of background to your experience, please?
Yeah, of course. Hi, I'm Vicki Hyland. I'm Global Head of Sourcing and Attraction at BP. It feels amazing to put makeup on for probably the first time in about 3 months. So I've made the most of today's session. As I said, I head up Global Sourcing and Attraction for BP, which means I'm responsible for the way that we source and attract candidates for everything from early careers, so interns, right through to experienced hire for all the countries that we operate in. I've been with BP for 9 years. Previously, before joining BP, which was my first in-house job, I spent around 15 years agency side.
Great, thank you. If I move around my screen, can we go to Kristen next, please?
Sure. Hey, Kristen Anderson. I'm the Global Employer Brand Lead at BAT. I have just celebrated 1 year at BAT, and for the most part, really first time client side in a career longer than I care to admit. And I come from agency and consultancy. I am a marketeer through and through. It's all I do. It's all I've ever done. And that's me.
Great, thank you, Kristen. And Neil?
Afternoon all, Neil Harvey here. Working for Allianz UK and LV General Insurance. Interesting time for us at the moment with the recent acquisitions of LV General Insurance and the L&G General Insurance business. Currently accountable for the recruitment into the General Insurance business. 15, 16 years in recruitment, I guess. Similar to Vicki, predominantly in agency, moving in-house around 7-8 years ago.
Great. Well, thank you all, and once again, thank you for joining us. So, our audience, I think they've been fairly kind to you. They've asked a very interesting question. So, just to remind you what the question that they chose to ask, the question is: where are employers still missing a trick when hiring? Neil, would you like to kick us off with that? Where do you think they're missing a trick?
All right, thanks for that, Will. I'll go first. It's a good question, actually, and there's lots of examples. I guess probably everybody attending this webinar can think of, and even us here. I think you touched on some of it in your presentation. More and more importantly, it's going to be how you're presenting your job advert, how you're attracting your talent. So I think it's very easy when it was a candidate-led market where employers might put a job advert on various platforms. And, we've all seen those job adverts that look a bit lazy. They look a bit kind of bullet pointy. There's no real kind of humanization behind that advert. So I think if I was a prospect looking for a new role and I saw a job advert that was very meaningless and very much full of jargon and didn't really represent the culture or the values of the organization, I guess I generally wouldn't apply for it. It wouldn't really be of interest to me. So I think what my advice would be to employers would be to make sure that if they are looking to hire the best talent available in the marketplace, whether it's somebody with transferable skills, really put some time and effort into your job description, your job advert.
Yeah. Okay. And Vicki, do you have some points to follow on to that, or some different points to make?
Yeah, and I think from Neil's side, I completely agree with him around the job description and the job ad and the piece where you talked about that, it shouldn't just be a pass away, oh, we're a flexible employer. I think these days, there's two pieces for me. The one is that we really need to think about what the candidate wants now. So instead of us saying we're flexible, or what we would usually say is our benefits as an organisation, really thinking about what it is that a candidate needs, not only to do their job, but to be able to live their life as well. So really from that kind of flexibility to that mental health piece. So really thinking about what that candidate needs and what they want, rather than just what we need as a business. I think the second point for me around this, and it's something that we've recently started to do where we were missing a trick, was about that really great workforce planning and that kind of sourcing piece, and starting those conversations early on. So let's really think about the talent that we need for the future, and look at how we start those conversations and find those different industries of where these people are working, to excite them about coming to work in an energy company, and perhaps in a digital role where they wouldn't have expected to have worked for someone like BP before.
So just to expand on that then, so you're saying kind of have, as an employer, have more of a strategy focused at specific sectors, and then what are the tactics for doing it? You're just saying to be more focused and understand what you're going to be doing.
Yeah, for sure. I think sometimes we can be quite reactive. I think there's lots going on. Organisations are busy, especially when it comes to recruitment. So if we can really think about those skills for the future that we need, and be especially now, and think about that planning, we can start to have those rich conversations, understand our market, those intels, those talent insights, that great stuff Totaljobs can offer us, and really use that rather than just going from that reactive to proactive.
Brilliant. Okay, and Kristen, do you have anything to add to those, to what tricks that employers are missing?
Just riffing on that, I completely agree. I think I always feel that it's definitely about the long game. It's about telling those really authentic stories. It's about really leveraging all of the channels that you've got access to. It's not inventing more channels, insisting that a Fortune 100 tobacco company gets on TikTok. That ain't gonna work. So it's just being true to the channels that you own and that you can command. And it's about putting authentic stories out there, so folks start to really learn a little bit about your organization. So exactly as the guys have said, you're not having to spin on a dime and be reactive. You've already started to foster those stories. You've already started to help folks realize what your brand is truly about, because at the end of the day, nobody knows your brand better than you do. But it's getting across that passive candidate story. And I think regardless of before COVID, after COVID, the length of time that it takes to hire, regardless of grade or level, it really needs to feel very inclusive. And so if you're hiring early career and you've got a workflow for that, you've got a process, and you know that that early career talent needs to speak to X number of folks, it's doing that really efficiently. And then of course the other end of that is that executive hire, where one does expect it to take some time, but let's not make that assumption. Let's not let it drag out for 4 to 6 months or longer in some cases, just because it is an executive hire. It's being really ruthless with time, and just really appreciating that that we're equals in the recruitment process, both future candidate, future employee, and employer.
Yeah, just on that, on the planning piece that obviously you and Vicki have both touched on, what kind of timescales? I mean, obviously we're living in a changing world, and even before this happened, but things are changing very, very quickly. But I'm just interested. I know it's a difficult question to answer, but I'm just interested to know, how do you identify in terms of transferable skills, and are you, some of them you might think, well, actually in 3 years' time we'll be looking for these type of skills, or do you think is it a shorter time? I'm just trying to get an idea to help the audience in terms of how long will that plan be?
Well, happy to jump in. Yeah. I think for us as a business, we are going through massive change at the moment, absolutely massive change. And so we are absolutely thinking about what are those future roles. And we're thinking about that now. And then it's, of course, ensuring that, Vicki, you said exactly, we're in the same boat. It's making sure that we're attracting talent with those, for us, it's those culture stories, it's those brand stories, it's the cool things that we're doing that folks might not realize we're doing, a McLaren partnership, for example. It's really making sure that we're getting that storytelling out there. So exactly as you said, it's folks then, oh, I never would have thought that, an energy company would have recruited for that type of, analyst or data specialist or, digital marketeer. So I think that is, that's the long game. And then as you realize, as we learn what the organization is doing from an innovation perspective, it's staying really close to those stakeholders and staying really close to those areas of the business. Long gone are the days where we can sit in our respective HR talent acquisition function. We really have to be across the business, in my opinion, more than a lot of other colleagues. We've really got to have our finger on the pulse of what the business is doing strategically, so we can be ready to react.
Yeah. And I agree with you on that, Kristen. Sorry, well, I was just going to add to that. As well as those technical skills we're talking about, we also don't know some of the skills that we'll need for the future, because we probably don't even have those types of jobs yet. As we all move through digital transformation. And one of the areas that we're looking at is, outside of technical skills, is about the skills that you need to be effective in the future, regardless. So whether that's resilience, problem solving, learning to unlearn, and looking at how we can help upskill people, especially students, in that area. So when they're ready, we've already started that connection with them. They may not come to work for BP to start with, but we will have helped them on their journey. So I think it's not just looking about, as we talk about those immediate skill sets, it's about setting people up for success for the future and knowing the organisation that helped to do that. Yeah,
and Neil, does that resonate with you?
Yeah, I think the only thing to add from me, fantastic. I think, the AI revolution is coming. The jobs of the future, nobody knows. I think my children will probably be doing roles that none of us, maybe, or even on this panel, have ever heard of. Job descriptions and job titles I've never even heard of before. we partnered quite heavily with Bristol University to make sure our data science initiative is up and running now, as quick as early as we can. Because, you know, without a doubt, as I say, AI revolution is certainly going to take some sectors by storm if it hasn't already. And obviously in our sector, it's going to be pretty big and will continue to grow.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point, actually, which kind of leads me on to my next question. When you mention, you know, young people, and obviously, you know, we've got children that, yeah, I mean, my son hasn't been to school since March, and you kind of go, you know, I'm sure that's going to be fine, but what as you quite rightly said, Neil, what are they going to be doing later? So I had a question that I thought of this morning, which is, so obviously with the challenges that we've all had this year, particularly with young job seekers and workers, what do you think that businesses, so just leading on from that point, Neil, what do you think businesses should and could be doing to help support that particular demographic? Vicky, do you have any?
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
Go for it, Neil.
Yeah. No, go on. Sorry, I missed it. My phone cut out.
It was really just focusing on your point that you made earlier in terms of what do businesses now need to be doing, and you touched on it in terms of, you know, young job seekers. You know, what could we be doing different? And obviously you touched on that. But if you, I'm happy for either you or Vicky to answer that in more detail.
Yeah, throw it out to the panel. I mean, I don't want to hog the limelight.
Vicky, what have you been doing anything specifically at BP to support the younger demographic?
We have, and I think one of the things, and this came, and again, it's to Kristen's point that this kind of came before COVID, which was the case that we started to look at how we could help young job seekers to get the skills for the future. And I mentioned, you know, one of the things that we want to do is make ourselves attractive, but also give something back to students. And after working with a number of universities and doing some research, we started to look at the skills that were needed, and there were 5 that really came to life: learning to unlearn, resilience, leveraging change, partnering with AI, and emotional intelligence. And these had come out of Davos and the World Economic Forum, who said that these were a number of, well, 5 of the about 50 skills that were needed of the future. And so what we did was create an initiative called Skills Refinery. And what that was we were promoting it on campus. Now we're doing it all virtually through social and other channels, of how students can see how capable they are in those skills. And then dependent on their level of ability, we then gave them an opportunity to do virtual learning, so they could learn those skills through nano learning, behavioural science, the theory behind those skills. And then what happened next was they got the chance to do a little quiz at the end, and they saw how their rating had gone up. So we helped to upskill them that way. And as we did that, the end of it was a challenge where they got to use those skills to answer a question of what will the future skill set look like. And that was brilliant because we had lots of people take part in that. But the winners were 3 students from Azerbaijan in their first year.
Oh, wow.
And we got them to come over, and it was last year they got that. It's unfortunate they're not able to attend this year, but the prize was to attend One Young World, which many of you may be aware of, is a initiative that is run by students, and it's high performing students between the age of 18 and 30, where they get together globally and discuss key matters of the environment, of the world in general, with absolute key speakers. And these students would never have had the opportunity to have done that. And one of the things that was key for this is not only we're upskilling them, but from a social mobility perspective, we were giving this information away for free. So instead of having to pay for training, it was something that BP was offering. And we've benefited from it because we've stayed in touch with them. They've built a relationship with us, and we're looking at how we can support them on their career through scholarships, interns, etc., etc. So I don't want to, I'm mindful of time, but that was something that we were very passionate about, to help job seekers, and we're continuing to grow that. Again, moving it more virtual than we were hoping to do this year because of COVID, but it's been a successful initiative for us.
Yeah, sounds Skills Refinery. Yeah, sounds very interesting and successful. If I can, I just want to move the discussion a little bit more towards innovation. We talked a little bit about skills innovation in the presentation. So I just want to get your thoughts, and Kristen, if we could start with you, if I may, just to get your thoughts on, during this time, has it forced you to innovate in terms of, you know, whether that could be changing your processes, finding new solutions? What kind of things have you been doing at BAT in terms of innovation during this difficult time?
Yeah, sure. I think for us and what I've personally experienced is it's a combination. So it is all of the things that we've all been doing. It's the usual suspects of trying to figure out how to work flexibly, but again, for BAT, how to support that emotionally. We were a very Monday through Friday in the office in most end markets. And now we're this online flexible organization. And so I think, again, we've all had to do that. I think, though, that what has also really worked for us is not innovating certain things. So what I mean by that is our CEO, Jack Bowles, announced our new corporate global strategy back in March. That was at the beginning of lockdown. So that went from, you know, a several days event in a location to all of it online. And we have moved through all of our activity based on that strategy. That didn't change. And so actually having those anchor points, having that consistency, having a leadership that hasn't, you know, changed and been pivoting. This is our strategy. We're just going to have to deliver it this way instead of all sitting around a table. So it's actually been that combination of, it's okay, guys, we're still delivering on the innovation, we're still delivering on the strategy, and ensuring that those things didn't change because of COVID. Now, the mechanism to get there, distribution in certain parts of the world, you can imagine for an organization like ours, that shifted massively, particularly in the early days of COVID, you know, 4 or 5 months ago. So having to be sensitive and sensible to how do we operate as an FMCG? How do we move product? How do we sell product? So there we had to be incredibly sensitive and flexible, and not just to our colleagues, but to our consumers, to our partners. So there we saw new ways of working and flexibility. And then just lastly, I was trying to teach my daughter this morning. My daughter took, she arrives at school at a different time than she's had to for years. And she took a bus and it got her there late. And she literally, I had to call her on the train and tell her to breathe. And she said, I'm going to be late, I'm going to be late. And I said, you know what? You are. So you have to assess, what does that mean? You're going to be late. What does it mean? What's the impact on the rest of your day? And how do I get her off that ledge? She's sobbing on the tube. And so these are the skills that we're teaching our young people. And now we're supporting each other. You're going to have a different challenge every day. It's a challenge maybe you haven't faced today.
Yeah.
And so it's, how do you manage it? It's the old adage of, it's not how we do when the sun is shining, it's when it's pitching with rain, you know? So it's, I think we've had to adapt in that way and help people feel that they can maybe be late to school today, as it were, but they're going to fix that and figure it out so they're not late tomorrow.
Yeah. Next time I'm late, I think I might give you a call if that's all right, Kristen.
Singing, I kept getting texts saying, stop telling me it's going to be okay. But it is. And for all of us in global businesses, it will be okay. We just have to figure out how to face the challenge.
Yeah, it's a good point.
I mean, most business undoubtedly have had to think about innovation if they're not already doing that. But I think for us, there was a bit of that, but it was more acceleration. So how do we quickly change our processes? How do we quickly adapt in a very short space of time? Technology has existed for a long time when it comes to video interviews, virtualization, but it's just now forcing the hand. So employers are now having to sort of, I guess, use that existing technology perhaps in a different way. So So you know, we instantly went into this sort of, I guess, slight panic mode. And okay, so from a hiring perspective, everything we do is very traditional. Like Kirsten said, you know, an interview takes place in the office, a telephone interview, whereas sort of almost overnight, you know, that process has completely changed. We're not there yet. I think, you know, we'd be absolutely lying if we said that we've got a process in place, a strategy in place of how we do that going forward. But what we have is we've kind of got this interim period now that's working and it's fine. But I guess the longer term goal is obviously to adapt a process that is purely for virtualization. I mean, our own CEO, Oliver, came out with a bold statement to say, you know, we expect up to 40% of our workforce working remotely. You know, and across Allianz Global, you can imagine how big that is. So, you know, we've got to start thinking about how do we do that. And then the second part, just on innovation, we talk about it from a recruitment attraction perspective, but also product perspective. You know, Kirsten mentioned how do we shift products? What can we do differently? But our LV business, our LV general insurance business, you know, launched a new product. We launched a product called Flow, which you know, the way that people buy car insurance online changed dramatically. People want more flexibility. People don't want to be tied into contracts that perhaps can be quite lengthy, quite costly for people. There's a lot of uncertainty. People want to make sure that they can come in and out of their costs, their incomings, their outgoings. So with Flow, it allows you to basically answer 7 or 8 questions, upload your driver's license, and get insured on a monthly basis with no tie-ins. And you know, if you think about the market that you're attracting, which arguably is your 18 to 30 market, you know, that is what people want. The digital age, people want to do things really, really quickly online and have a great, I guess, kind of, you know, user experience while they're doing it.
But just quickly, Neil, with those, like the new products, the new innovative products that you've launched, has that meant that you've had to look for different types of skills?
Not necessarily. We've, I mean, the skills that we have had to look for is to make that product work efficiently is from an automated AI perspective. You know, so you're going to need a lot of people working on the data science community and that offering. Hence why we partnered very, very closely with Bristol University to make sure we continue to, I guess, attract the best in the marketplace. But the issue we've still got in financial services and like most places is when you're looking to hire that type of skill and capability, how do you immediately tap into that sector? So how do you get a data scientist thinking, I'm going to go to an insurance business because that's where I want to go.
Yeah.
You know, they're probably going to be thinking, I want to go to, you know, the sexy brands of Amazon, Google, Facebook, right? That's where they want to go. So how, as an organisation, can we pull those people to our business?
Yeah.
And I think just digging on that, I know we haven't got much time, but it's interesting because all of us have that same challenge about those new skills that we need to be bringing in, especially around digital. So how do we all work together to get that talent rather than they go to Google, Facebook and Amazon? So I think at some point we should join forces and have that conversation, how we make ourselves the employer of choice.
Yeah.
Good point. Just sorry to interrupt, just very quickly, because I promised my colleagues that we won't overrun. So I've got 2 minutes. And what I would like to do, I just wanted to, so our audience has some takeaways. So it's been 6 months since the initial lockdown was announced. What three, if we can go through starting with you, Vicki, could you just give 3 things that you think that businesses need to focus on for the rest of the year? I know we're in September, it sounds crazy that we're talking about the end of the year, but what are those 3 things you think businesses should focus on in terms of transfer of skills?
Cool. Well, I'll just say them, flexibility, prioritising mental health and upskilling for the future.
Fantastic. And Kristen?
Be really consistent. You know, don't shift if your brand story. Speak really directly to your prospective talent and your current talent, and really continue to communicate really, really clearly and authentically. And then for me, it's retaining momentum. It's just really retain the momentum in the conversation.
Great. And finally, Neil, what's your three tips?
Yeah, I'll give you 2 takeaways. It's employees of the future, so similar to Vicki, but audit your employer brand and EVP. So give yourself a greater focus on your employer brand and EVP, because what you think it was pre-COVID probably isn't what it is now.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you so much. I mean, I could talk to all 3 of you all day. So, I'm sure there's a lot that we could discuss further. Sadly, we only have an hour. But look, thank you very much. I'm sure our audience have enjoyed it. And you're all very busy people. So thank you so much for your time. And thank you to our audience. Thank you we are going to be having some more webinars. So across a number of different subjects. So we'll keep you informed. And thanks everybody for joining us this afternoon. Thank you and have a lovely evening.
Guys.
Thanks everybody.
Thank you. Cheers. Thank you for joining.
Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye bye.